On today's episode, just 1 week out from the start of ICAST, we have a little teaser episode here and a small sliver of some of the gear that we could see released next week. So we're going to talk about a few hard baits, a few soft baits, rods, and reels that brands have already tipped us off about as we get ready for the biggest fishing expo and trade show of the year. All that and more on this episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk Podcast. As always, we are brought to you by the great folks over at American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. And you guys know ALF is my favorite place to shop because you're getting great gear from great people that actually care about you. They're a great Midwestern tackle shop right there in southern Indiana. They ship nationwide. They have great shipping. They have great customer service. They have a price match guarantee on the website. And they have the internet's best selection of lightly used fishing gear as well. So they are always updating that used site over on the American Legacy Fishing page. You can just click used in the top left corner of the page, and you're going to see rods, reels, everything from 13 Fishing to Dobbins to Abu Garcia to Arc to 6 Sense, G. Loomis, Shimano, Daiwa, all of your favorite brands. They have gently used fishing gear to save you a ton of money. We're talking like 20, 30, 40% off regular priced just because this rod has been used a few times. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen used gear come from American Legacy Fishing, and it looks like, again, they made maybe like 3 casts with it. The condition of all of this gear is mind-blowing when you look at the price that you're going to pay. So go check them out over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com. And as always, be sure to check here in a couple weeks because they will have your new ICAST releases once those are available to the public. Continue to check that homepage and you will see some of the gear that we're going to be talking about over the next 2 weeks pop up for purchase over at AmericanLegacyFishing.com. And as always, you can use code TackleTalk5 to save an extra 5% off your order. Again, that's code TackleTalk5 with our friends over at AmericanLegacyFishing.com. Okay, folks, the very first thing that we have here today, this is something that might be a little random to some of you, but every once in a while there's an article that comes across my feed that catches my eye, and we had one of those this week. And I don't remember how or where I saw this, but this is an article from Aaron McGuire from the Concho Valley homepage.com, but it is titled Bass Fingerlings Stocked in OHIV Lake. Now, that seems boring enough, right? It's Texas. They have a great DNR down there. The Texas Parks and Wildlife are one of the best in the country at fisheries management. So why would that be special? Well, let's read this really fast. So I promise this is like 2 paragraphs, but it says, TPWD, so Texas Parks and Wildlife District, I think is what that stands for, workers stocked fingerlings into sections of the lake that are protected from predators and statistically likely to grow larger fish. The fish are part of more than 300,000 fingerlings expected to be added by the end of summer 2025. So that right there is the first thing that caught my eye, right? 300,000 fingerlings going into OHIV by the time the summer ends. Interesting enough, but let's keep reading. They say the purpose of those is to develop a self-sustaining, naturally reproducing population. TPWD biologist Lynn Wright said, "We call that supplemental stocking. The fingerlings are bred through Texas Parks and Wildlife District's Toyota Share Lunker program, one of many fish stocking programs that can be found across the Lone Star State." So the rest is irrelevant to us, obviously, but it talks a lot about, I think, some local stocking programs and kind of puts it into perspective, the difference between Share Lunker and this local stocking program that they do around wherever this paper is from. But I thought this was interesting news, at least to me, for a few reasons. One, because OHIV could quite possibly be the top body of water in the country in terms of increased bass fishing pressure over the last, 3 or 4 years probably. Because a few years ago, a few YouTubers went down there and blew up a fairly well-kept secret for the entire world to see. Wintertime, double-digit fish caught offshore on OHIV in Texas using giant A-rigs and double A-rigs and live scope and the whole deal. And I mean, your big names went down there that have huge followings on YouTube. John B., Ben Milliken, Josh Jones, they all went down there to a lake that was a pretty well-kept secret for decades before that, it seems like. And now OHIV has become a household name in a matter of months after those videos were released. So I think a lot of us have been wondering the same thing, right? Can OHIV keep it up? Well, it sounds like Texas Parks and Wildlife is doing their part to try and make sure that they're assisting the best they can. And the second reason is because we've talked to people on this show before that have very different opinions on stocking and genetics and the importance of that whole side of fisheries management and what role that plays. And that's okay. That's the fun part of what we do here. I like fun, interesting, opinionated conversations. Different viewpoints, I think, are a good thing. But like a few weeks ago when we talked to Shan O'Gorman, he seems to be, and I hope I get this right, and I'm not kind of putting words in his mouth here, but he seems to be of the philosophy that the actual genetics of the bass aren't nearly as important as just sort of the sheer luck and chance of it surviving that fry and vulnerable juvenile stage, right? If we put a bass fingerling with quote unquote good genetics from like a 10-pounder, and then we put another bass fingerling with quote unquote bad genetics from like a skinny, malnourished 3-pounder, the offspring are still at the mercy of that lottery of survival. And if they survive and the fishery is set up well enough, both of those offspring have equal opportunity at becoming that next generation's 10-pounder. I think that's a fairly accurate Cliff's Notes version of what Shan believes and Shan has articulated over the years. And then you have some people like the Texas Parks and Wildlife who have made it their top priority to breed and stock bass fingerlings with those quote unquote good genetics because of their Share Lunker program, which allows Texas anglers, I believe, to donate like their, 10, 11, 12-pound fish and up to this program to be raised and bred. And then those are the offspring that they're stocking back into these trophy lakes. So trophy fish producing trophy offspring seems to be the Texas Parks and Wildlife thought process there. And there's no arguing that whatever they're doing is working because Texas has some of the best managed and most productive fisheries in the country. And it's just like the mecca for big bass. And I know part of that is the climate, part of that is the management process, and part of that might be genetics, right? Who knows? I'm definitely not qualified to tell you what is right and wrong on that side of things, but I think it's just cool and important to highlight the many different sides of an issue. And 300,000 supposedly genetically superior fingerlings being stocked into one of the hottest fisheries in the country over the past few years is interesting to me. Now, it's also important to have a good frame of reference for the size of OHIV and the number of fish they're stocking. So at Conservation Pool, OHIV is like 19,000 acres in surface area. I think it's 19,149 to be exact. But that means that with 300,000 fingerlings stocked, that's like 15.7 fish per acre. So if your average yard in a city is half an acre, you're looking at about 8 fish for every area the size of your yard that the Texas Parks and Wildlife will be stocking into OHIV this year in terms of like fingerling bass. Also important to remember is that those are fingerlings, so nowhere near that amount of them will survive. Most of those will be eaten before they ever even get remotely close to catchable size. So perspective on that side of things is also important to remember, but just a fun little article, I think, about the stocking of one of the most highly publicized lakes in the country over the past few years. All right, next up here on the show, we are officially 1 week away from the start of ICAST, which is the biggest trade show of the year in the fishing industry, and this has traditionally been where a lot of your big brands come out with their new products each and every year, and it's our first look at those new products that will be hitting shelves very, very soon. So 1 week away from today, I will be on my way to ICAST as I do every year to soak in everything and report back to you all with what we always hope is the most in-depth and informative podcast about ICAST that you'll find anywhere on the internet. That's our goal, at least. Now, I'm not going to promise that we do that. There's amazing people out there, but that's always our goal, is to take kind of a spin and an approach at ICAST that a lot of people don't do. We really try and go in with more of, again, traditionally tackle talk wise, an unbiased, unfiltered and sincere and genuine approach to these new products to tell you what we're excited about, what we're not excited about, what we heard from the brands, what we think for ourselves, and just, again, kind of give you like a regular person's take at all of the products that will be coming out. So this year, our next couple weeks are going to look like this. Today, we're going to do a little preview of some of the products that have already been announced or teased or leaked. Now, we don't leak anything. We know some things that are coming that we can't say yet. Like we've said before here at Tackle Talk, we do not leak anything to the public before the company is ready or before someone else leaks it, because we don't want to be the one to put out spoilers. And I know a lot of media outlets try to get that scoop or try to break news or whatever. We really try and respect the brands and the people that worked really hard on those products. I just personally think they should be the folks that get to announce these things, not people like us. But now if someone else does it, someone else puts it out there in the internet or out there in the world, then it's fair game for us to talk about. And some of that is what we're going to talk about here today. So that's today. And then next week on Tuesday, as ICAST is starting, we have a completely non-ICAST related show as sort of, I guess, like a palate cleanser, as everybody in the fishing world will be bombarding you with, again, like I said, those awkward booth videos and canned marketing jargon and new hypey baits. We want to be your little escape from that next Tuesday. So while that episode goes live, I will be on a plane on the cheapest Spirit airline flight that I could find on my way to my super cheap hotel in Orlando for our fully self-paid trip to ICAST. We don't owe anybody anything. No one got us a pass to get in. We're not expected to talk nice or to cover certain things. We have complete freedom at ICAST, and that's really important to me. So that's kind of like the schedule of events over the next couple weeks. Today is our preview. Next Tuesday is going to be a completely opposite episode from a lot of your ICAST content. And then July 22nd will be our full comprehensive ICAST episode. So that's what's coming your way here in the next couple weeks. But now let's get back to today's episode. And we have a handful of brands that have sort of teased us with what could be coming at ICAST. And we're going to talk about what we know so far today with a little bit of a preview. Not too much info because I want to save the majority of our conversation and thoughts for after we get a chance to actually put our hands on this stuff, but just a little sneak peek into the future never really hurt anybody. So let's start with a brand that I've really come to like over the past 3+ years, and they've seen crazy growth, especially the last 1 or 2 since joining the Pradco family, and that's Great Lakes Finesse. So this episode is coming out on July 8th, which means I think I'm safe to say what I believe they will officially be releasing on July 7th. So probably the day before this episode comes out. But Great Lakes Finesse is dropping their new micro series of soft plastics. And if you're thinking, wait a second, Great Lakes Finesse is already known for their small baits and small profiles, you're right, but they're apparently going to get even smaller. So it sounds like the micro series is going to be their already popular shapes, namely the snack craw, the juvie craw, and the drop minnow, but they're going to be in even more mini versions than before. So the snack craw is going to be 1.7 inches instead of the regular 2.1 size. The juvie craw is going to go from 2.5 inches down to 2 inches, and the drop minnow is going to go from 2.75 down to 2.25. So pretty substantial changes for some already tiny baits. I mean, you're looking at, I don't know what that is, I'm not a math wizard, but probably 20 to 25% size reduction on some of these baits. So that's interesting. You're also getting smaller mini pro tube heads so you can match those new juvie craws. We're getting a smaller sneaky underspin. If you like their underspin, they're going to have another size even smaller, again, probably to help with that new drop minnow and things like that. And then you get a pretty sweet bait binder that GLF is going to come out with for the Great Lakes Finesse terminal tackle specifically. And other than that, the only other thing I know is there are going to be like 4 new colors coming out in the drop kick shad if you're a drop kick shad fan. Okay, so that's Great Lakes Finesse. Now let's move on to another company. Let's go to ZMan. And last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, we already talked about the Micromax, so I'm not going to beat that dead horse. It's coming. We've covered it at length, and I'll be talking more about it, I'm sure, at actual ICAST once I get the chance to see it. But we also have 2 more product lines that are coming out from ZMan. So first off, we have the new Fuzzy series of baits, which includes the Fuzzy TRD, the Fuzzy Bugs, and the Fuzzy Nuggets. Now, the Fuzzy TRD and Fuzzy Bugs are pretty self-explanatory. It's a TRD and a bug with silicone implanted in them and sticking out of them like people have been doing for years, making their own homemade versions of this. But then you're going to get the Fuzzy Nuggets, which is a dice bait. And that is definitely going to be one of the themes of ICAST 2025. It's dice. or dice style baits in the realm of like the OSP dice. And then more recently, the Strike King Tumbleweed. There's going to be a lot more of that. I can promise you, 3 of which we already know about and we'll probably talk about here in a second. But this is one of the brands that's doing it. ZMan. So the fuzzy nuggets are going to be an ElaZtech version of a dice bait. So for those of you that might be looking for a little bit lighter or possibly floating version of this, or if you're just looking for increased durability, that's something that ZMan always has going for it, and they're going to give you in the dice category that most people are not. And then the last thing here from ZMan is the product that I'm most excited for, which is ironic because it's probably the most plain or boring thing they're going to put out this year, but I can't wait for it, and it's the ZMan Llama Tubes. Now, this is in collaboration with Seth Feider, where you are getting what I believe is our first true ElaZtech traditional mini tube. Now, we've had ZMan TRD tubes before, which I use a lot in the creeks around here, but that's more of like a solid body TRD with just some tube skirting at the end of it. This is supposedly a true hollow tube that you can rig more traditionally with like an inserted tube head and tube hook, and I'm very pumped for these because shape looks great. I like how small the body is compared to the legs. They're only 2 inches, so they're very, very downsized. This screams Midwest fishing to me, so I'm here for it. Probably my favorite thing I've seen from ZMan so far, the Llama tubes, the 2-inch tubes with the help of Seth Feider coming out ICAST this year. Okay, let's keep going here. Next, we have Woo Tungsten, who is also jumping on the dice bait train with the release of Woo Cubes. Yes, this is a tungsten company releasing dice baits. Because why not, right? Everybody else is doing it. Woo Tungsten has entered the chat in the dice bait game, so there's that, I guess. Do I expect them to be giant players in the dice world? No, I don't. But again, it's capitalism. It's the hot thing right now. If you have the ability to make them, I guess why not? Woo Tungsten said, yep, sign me up. We are also going to make dice. Okay, next up, we have Exone lures. And I'm not 100% sure if Exone will physically be at ICAST. They're one of the brands I had a hard time finding if they were going to be attending this year. I don't think they are, but they are releasing some baits right now that sort of coincide, it looks like, with ICAST, so we're going to include them here. I'm also not 100% sure what the releases are. All we really have to go off of is one cryptic Instagram post. It looks like they, too, will be releasing some sort of dice bait or fuzzy bait. So if you're keeping score at home now, that is 3 dice baits and 3 fuzzy baits from 3 different companies, and I'm sure, again, I can almost promise you there will be more coming at ICAST this year. Again, it's going to be a common theme. Everybody and their brother is going to be making a dice bait, it seems like. But Exone also released the Rally Shad about a month ago, so I guess that sort of counts, and it's just kind of like your classic fork tail slender scoping minnow. They released that in a 3.75 and a 4.5 inch. Both versions are $5.99 per pack. I believe those were in collaboration with Cooper Gallant over at Bassmaster. I'm pretty sure that's whose name is going to be on that package. So some cool baits again if you're into the scoping, if you're into the straight tail or fork tail minnow type deal and you like Exone, they are giving you another option there, the Exone Rally Shad. All right, next up here, we have Big Bite Baits, and this is another brand that I typically pay attention to at ICAST because you can usually count on them for a couple new products that are not just like a mail-it-in version of a bait that they already have with a few small tweaks on it in their current lineup. They're usually pretty good about releasing actual new baits to them, but so far, I've seen 2 new SKUs that it looks like we're getting from Big Bite Baits. Again, so far, this is obviously subject to change. The first one they're going to be releasing is, wait for it, a fuzzy stickworm. Yes, a stickworm with silicone sticking out the side of it. Apparently, the Fuzz Train still has plenty of seats left on it because now I believe that is 4 brands that are going to have fuzzy baits or silicone strands sticking out of them at some point. I think we should probably set the over-under at like 10 companies at ICAST that will be introducing fuzzy-style baits. I think that's a pretty fair line for the Vegas folks out there. I might take the over on that. But I also saw that Big Bite Baits is releasing their Thresher Worm, which is like a 4-inch worm with about a 2-inch ribbed worm body and then 2 inches of like a big, aggressive, almost shark tail fin off the back of this thing. And I feel like this is just going to have to be a drop shot bait because I don't see many other applications that this is going to work well for. That big, giant tail is going to make that thing wave and move so inconsistently that my gut tells me this is almost an all or nothing drop shot bait. And I should say that both of these new baits coming from Big Bite, the Thresher Worm and the Fuzzy Stick, are both in their Sensation lineup, meaning that they're both pretty heavily scented. It's like their version of the Berkley Max Scent or Power Bait lineup, or, NetBait's Bait Fuel Infused lineup there. So both of these new baits from Big Bite Baits are going to come heavily scented right out of the bag. Okay, let's move on to some rods and reels here really fast. The first one I want to hit here is from Lew's. Now, Lew's is doing something kind of interesting here, I guess. They've put a new version out of their very popular Lew's Speed Spool casting reels. But this version is going to be called the Lew's Speed Spool RX. Now, the regular Speed Spool was for a long time their flagship kind of $99 casting reel, reliable, a fan favorite among Lew's buyers. But recently, with all the trade issues and price changes and tariffs and all that kind of stuff, I believe I saw that the price of a Lew's Speed Spool raised from $99 to $129. So you're looking at over a 30% price increase there. So that's a bit of a pain point already with Lew's buyers. But now we're getting another version of the Speed Spool with one very distinct difference. And that's that they're now going to offer that Paramag ITB braking system that was originally in the Custom Pro last year that we talked about, that gold and yellow reel that came out with like a $300 price tag on it. That same braking system is now going to be offered in the Speed Spool under that Speed Spool RX reel for $179.99. So if you want to try that braking system, but you don't have $300 to drop, here's your chance, I guess. The Speed Spool RX will be debuted from Lew's. Now, if we take a look at the Shimano side of things, we know that one of their big rods they'll be showing off this year is going to be the recently released Shimano Outlier, which is a 6-rod product line of rods specifically for big swim baits and big glide baits. So they've got like a 7.4 medium heavy fast, they've got a 7.9 medium heavy plus moderate fast, they've got a 7.10 heavy plus moderate, a 7.11 heavy fast, an 8-foot extra heavy moderate, and then an 8-foot extra heavy moderate fast. So basically they're trying to cover all of your swim bait needs from, it looks like, soft plastic sort of harnessed line through swim baits like a coal shad or a mag draft, all the way up to your heaviest glide baits that you can find. So the only thing I'm a little hesitant about on these rods are going to be the grips, which is why I can't wait to get there and actually play with them and put them in my hands and see if that spiral EVA grip is as weird as it looks in pictures or if it's actually comfortable. I have no idea. We're not going to know till we pick one up. But if it is comfortable, this is going to be a pretty killer line of swim bait rods in that $350 range. It kind of looks like they took an X Pride B, which everybody loves right now, and just sort of beefed it up a little bit for those bigger baits. So that's one of the only things I've really seen from Shimano so far. The other thing I saw is that we're getting a new Exone B spinning reel, but to be honest, I might pick that up for half a second and then move on because I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time on a $599 spinning reel. It is still not really relevant to me, or I'm assuming most people who listen to Tackle Talk. We are not in the $600 spinning reel range just yet. Okay, and finally here, we have some news from KastKing. And KastKing has announced a few things, but one I specifically want to focus on here is the KastKing MG TI bait caster. Now, this is basically the KastKing MG12, which I believe is a $249 reel, but they've made one big change. The MG12 has a magnesium spool, and the MG TI has a, you guessed it, titanium spool. So this is the press release I got from KastKing. It says, introducing the new KastKing MGTI Elite, the world's first low-profile bait casting reel with a full titanium spool and shaft. The new fully titanium spool weighs only 1/10 of an ounce, offering castability for a wide range of lures from 0.05 ounces to 1 ounce. This makes the spool and shaft feather light, has unmatched strength and durability, and gives it extremely low startup inertia for casting those ultralight baits. Due to its tensile strength of 250 times higher than standard aluminum spools, you can rest assured that the lightweight design will handle even the most rugged conditions. With additional features like swing wing side plate cover, carbon fiber handle with TPE knobs, clicker tension knob for a crisp sound, LFTV tapered line guide, CNC machined X-shaped brake dial for ergonomic functionality, and 9+1 Maxi Dur double shielded stainless steel ball bearings, plus 2 EZO bearings, the MGTI is sure to be your go-to reel in your tackle arsenal. Available in right and left-hand retrieve models in the popular 7.2-to-1 gear ratio. The MGTI debuts at ICAST with a $299 MSRP. So there you go. Color me intrigued, I guess. Now, I could be wrong, but I think we've seen titanium integrated in reels before, just maybe not to this level. I mean, like the Lose Elite TI and the Pro TI have, I think, what they call titanium deposition finish on the outside of an aluminum frame. So that's, I guess, like part titanium, maybe. But I feel like in the salt game or the fly game or wherever, I've definitely seen titanium played with before. So I don't know how legit this claim is of the first low-profile baitcaster with a titanium spool and shaft is. I guess we'll have to ask around. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if this is the real first low-profile reel with a titanium spool and shaft, because for all of the flack that Cast King catches, at least they're pushing things forward and they're trying new things year after year. They had like the smart reels, they had the deadbolt reel with no drag, they have the Fish IQ smart sunglasses. They come up with some kind of wacky off-the-wall stuff, but I actually dig it because this is what ICAST is supposed to be all about. This is what we want out of the ICAST show. We want new, odd, quote unquote innovative products. So I'm here for it. Bring on more of this. It makes no sense to make fun of Cast King for coming out with stuff like this when this is what we want. We want something brand new and different we've never seen before. And then when we get it, we go, oh, that's dumb. And then the same thing when we don't get new innovative stuff, we go, oh, everybody's just copying each other. So there's no way to make anybody happy now, but this is the kind of stuff that I actually enjoy going to ICAST to see, is these kind of quirky, off the wall, quote unquote first to do something that's cool to me as like a tackle nerd. So that's a very quick rundown of what we've heard of so far. Now, again, I'm recording this on Sunday, July 6th. So if you're listening to this on Tuesday, July 8th, at this time of the year, a lot can happen in 2 days, especially over the next week or two. A lot of leaks, a lot of teasers will be coming out the week before ICAST. But like I said, I don't want to do any of that too close to the show because then it sort of ruins the actual ICAST episode that we'll do on the Tuesday after the show with a full recap and breakdown of everything. So next week, absolutely no ICAST talk from us here on the show so that you can fully enjoy the actual annual ICAST episode on July 22nd. And if scheduling works out and all goes according to plan, next week's show and guest, wink, wink, nod, nod, should be almost the polar opposite of what's going on at ICAST to give you sort of a nice kind of yin and yang and balance to all the new gear hype, if that gives you any sort of hint at what the topic and guest might be for next week. All right, everybody, that is this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate you all. As always, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you can leave us a review on Apple or Spotify, that helps a ton. Thank you guys so much to everybody that's already left one. If you haven't yet, and you can take like 10 seconds to do so, that would be fantastic. Be sure to go to the website, tackletalkpodcast.com, for all of your Tackle Talk needs. If you have a question, you can DM us at Tackle Talk Podcast on Instagram or Facebook. You can email us, tackletalkpodcast@gmail.com. And we'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.